Hello and welcome. My name is Formula Ship 3, and today we're going down the rabbit hole of the Zodiac. So what exactly is the Zodiac in reference to? The Zodiac is an unidentified serial killer operating in Northern California between the 1960s and the 70s. The Zodiac Killer claimed responsibility for at least 5 murders, though some researchers and law enforcement officials believe he may have been responsible for more. The confirmed victims are David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, killed on Lake Herman Road near Vallejo, California, December 20th, 1968. Michael McGough and Darlene Ferrin were shot on July 4th, 1969, in the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. Ferrin died from her injuries, where McGough survived his attack. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were stabbed on September 27th, 1969 at Lake Berryessa in Napa County, California. Cecilia died 2 days after her attack, and Hartnell survived. The last known victim of the Zodiac was Paul Stein. He was shot and killed on October 11th, 1969 in the Presidio Heights neighborhood in San Francisco, California, in commission of driving a taxi. Both Michael McGough and Brian Hartnell had lived private lives since their attacks, avoiding media attention and maintaining a low profile. Their experiences as survivors of the Zodiac Killer's attacks undoubtedly left a profound and lasting impact on their lives, and they have been commended for their bravery in assisting law enforcement with their investigations. It's important to respect the privacy of these individuals and recognize the immense challenges they have faced in coping with the aftermath of their traumatic experience. Besides being known as a prolific serial killer, the Zodiac will probably be most remembered for his ciphers. The most known ciphers are the 408 cipher and the 340 cipher. He also created the Z13 and Z32 ciphers. The 408 cipher is said to be cracked by a school teacher and his wife, and then in 2020, 3 individuals are credited with solving the 340 cipher. The Zodiac would also send taunting letters and ciphers to major newspaper outlets, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, as well as the Vallejo Times-Herald. These letters included things like threats to the media, threats to law enforcement. He would also taunt law enforcement's inability to catch him, and would also claim responsibility for the killings. Lastly, the letters would include personal details about the motives, desires, and background. These details were often cryptic and difficult to interpret. Overall, the letters were characterized by their erratic nature, erratic writing style, and attempts to manipulate and taunt law enforcement and the public. They played a significant role in shaping the public's perception of the Zodiac Killer and contributed to the mystery surrounding his identity. Speaking of identity, law enforcement made some valiant efforts to solve the case. The most popular suspect was Arthur Lee Allen. His behavior and characteristics were similar to the Zodiac, as well as his proximity to the crime scene. Unfortunately, he was never charged, and later DNA would prove to not link Allen to the crimes. Lawrence Kane was another suspect who was proposed to be the killer by his own stepson. There are claims that on his deathbed he admitted to being the Zodiac, but there is no factual evidence linking him to the crime. Richard Gatkowski was a journalist at the same newspaper where some of the Zodiac letters were sent to. There is no evidence to support him being the Zodiac Killer, but it is listed that his background and behavior would make him a plausible suspect. There is also a theory that it could have been multiple killers. Some researchers believe the Zodiac Killer may have been responsible for only some of the murders attributed to him, with other crimes possibly being committed by different individuals. It is important to note that many suspects have been proposed over the years, and each theory has its proponents and skeptics. Despite extensive investigations and numerous theories, the true identity of the Zodiac Killer remains unknown, and the case remains one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in criminal history. I have 2 theories about who might have committed the crime. First, there is no evidence suggesting that any of the Zodiac Killer's victims knew each other before their encounter. The attack seemed to have been opportunistic rather than driven by pre-existing connections between victims. Therefore, if there is no connection between the victims, we can assume that the attacks were not the result of any disputes or disagreements involving any of the parties. Second, considers that the attacks occurred in remote areas. This indicates that the attackers either drove around specifically searching for victims or encountered them incidentally while working. Therefore, jobs that involve driving are particularly relevant. Common occupations that fit this criteria include taxi drivers, security officers, police officers, and truck drivers. So my theory is that the perpetrator could have been law enforcement. It wouldn't be unusual for a police officer to approach a car parked in a vacant parking lot or along the roadside, providing a legitimate reason to encounter the people without raising suspicion. Additionally, the killer appeared to have a deep understanding of police procedures and investigative methods, further suggesting that he might have been a law enforcement officer. Another indication that he could be a law enforcement officer is his ability to avoid capture and leave minimal evidence. Additionally, the manner in which he interacted with the victim supports this theory. Surviving victims reported that he was calm and confident, displaying a sense of authority consistent with someone used to giving commands or being in control. Another scenario to consider is that the culprit could have been homeless or transient. Although I am inclined to dismiss this possibility, stabbing someone tends to be messy. Individuals experiencing homelessness often lack access to regular hygiene facilities or changes of clothing due to living conditions. Furthermore, it's reasonable to assume that a homeless person with a gun might opt to sell it for money or basic necessities. Another notion that comes to mind is that the perpetrator could have been a fanatic, angered by teenagers engaging in sinful behavior in cars. Given the prevalence of religion during that era, it's possible that someone might have felt compelled to administer a lesson. Nonetheless, even this hypothesis doesn't appear entirely credible. Unraveling the mystery of the Zodiac Killer and comprehending what truly transpired is uncertain. Decades have elapsed since the crimes were perpetrated, and despite thorough investigations, the killer identity remains elusive, leaving numerous questions unresolved. However, advancements in forensic technology, DNA analysis, and investigative techniques may offer new opportunities for solving cold cases like Zodiac killings. In recent years, law enforcement agencies have continued to review evidence and pursue leads in hopes of finally identifying the killer. Additionally, the continued public interest in the case, the dedication of amateur sleuths, researchers, and true crime enthusiasts contribute to the ongoing efforts to uncover new information and theories about the Zodiac Killer's identity and motives. While it's impossible to predict with certainty whether the case will ever be definitively solved, there is always the possibility that new evidence or breakthroughs could emerge in the future, shedding light on one of the most enduring mysteries in criminal history. Until then, the case of the Zodiac Killer remains an open investigation and a subject of fascination for many. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. To stay updated with future content, consider subscribing to the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave me a comment below. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.